anything that you say can and will be held against you in the court of law.
Well, that goatee definitely would be held against you in a court of law.
All right, well, we're going to put it on the poll. Goatee, yes or no? That's just what we'll put on the poll. We'll put it on the poll. Welcome on in. Riders! Riders! No durs, no does, Raiders. I think they beat the only team in the league that they could actually beat, but that's how we'll start our wonderful week. Welcome on in. It is Thanksgiving week. My favorite holiday, by the way. We can get to that here in a second. That is Sean O'Connell. He is at Real OCSports on Twitter. I'm at Zak Sports, ZAK Sports. Sean, as we like to not talk about sports all the time, I prefer, honestly, not talking about sports. What is your favorite holiday?
I like to try
by the way.
A cucumber. I like to try and be creative.
Okay.
But
just say what your favorite holiday is.
But at the end of the day, I'm a simple man, and Christmas is my favorite holiday.
Yeah, I can respect that. I'm a Thanksgiving guy because it's more family orientated. I don't know if I've been kind of jaded by Christmas, and I feel like Christmas is too commercial. Halloween is fun, sure, but when you're younger, Thanksgiving just is like a time where your family comes around, and it just, it's a feel-good holiday for me. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you enjoy being around family that much, then yes, Thanksgiving is an incredible holiday.
Don't say anything incriminating, either about your family or your in-laws. Welcome on in. It is the Silver and Zach podcast. OC, we've been talking about L's here, and I know you hate me for being the woulda, coulda, shoulda guy. And by the way, your best friend Gabe makes fun of me just as much for that, if not more than you do. I am like Mr. It could have been. Well, if he didn't have 19 coaches in 9 years, then maybe he'd be better off. I'm Mr. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. But there is no denying the fact that they have been in 9 one-score games this year, and they finally won their first one. A walk-off. Davante Adams, spoiler alert, throw the guy the ball. What'd you make from the game? Honestly, OC, I'm going to be the pessimistic guy. Usually I'm the glass half full. I'm glass half empty. That's the only team they could have beaten in the NFL, other than maybe the Texans. The Broncos are a disaster. What say you?
Well, I don't think you're wrong about that, but that's a good thing for the Raiders. If you lost to this Broncos team, you really have to start ripping everything down. Right?
But OC, okay. A couple weeks back, you tweeted something out where you said we're really good at talking about bad things or something like that. It was a backhanded compliment. So if you're saying, yes, if you lost to the Broncos, it would be devastating, you're also saying that beating them is not really a big deal. It was a close game. It wasn't like you blew them out.
It's not a big deal, right? It doesn't mean that you're a Super Bowl contender. It doesn't mean that you're playoff bound. But what it means is that you are not like the absolute bottom of the barrel in your own division. You're not the absolute bottom of the barrel in your own conference. You're not the absolute bottom of the barrel in the NFL. And what we saw, right, it's so funny because I think the Raiders might listen to this podcast because
I don't think so. We did.
No, I think it's like a very popular podcast in the Raiders locker room because last week we were talking about, right, like they got these talented guys that if you can't get strong performances from these top talents, you have absolutely no hope. And what did you have in this game, all right? Your best friend, Derek Carr, who I think is not great, but you've been telling me.
Friend. Never met the guy. Actually, I did once. It was at the Reggie McKenzie introduction. You did meet Derek. Anyways, not the point. Go ahead. My best friend, Derek Carr, what? He had a good game.
He had a great game. He played incredibly well, right? Which is you're going to have from him with the rest of this roster being a little bit under-talented. But you do have these bright spots, right? Josh Jacobs, another incredible game from him.
Mm-hmm.
Went over 100 yards. And then, of course, the guy that if you go all the way back, listen to the archived Silver and Zach podcast, you go all the way back, and I think it was week 2, I was just like, give me more Davante Adams.
Yes.
Just throw the ball to him.
Yeah.
When the defense knows where the ball's going.
You said that since week 2.
Throw the ball to him, right? 7 catches, 141 yards, 2 tutties. Like, you get these strong performances from your best players. By the way, Max Crosby, a couple of sacks on the defensive side of the ball. It allows you to actually entertain the idea of winning, right? Then your role players are just like, okay, they're doing their job. If I just do my job, that'll be enough to get us a win, which is true over the Broncos, which is true maybe over the Texans, probably would have been true over the Indianapolis Colts if you had got those kind of performances. If you can get your best players into a groove and your role players just not screwing it up, you can beat these bad teams. And right now, that is a positive for the Raiders. You're not going to crown anything because of it. You're not going to hear me heap any unnecessary praise because of it. But proving to yourself, more important than anything else, proving to yourself that you're not the bottom of the barrel in the National Football League is a step up from your quarterback crying in the postgame.
I want to make an analogy right now that I'm not going to do because this is on wax and this goes out to like the public and we have like viewers. So I'll say it to you privately. Like I'll text you what my analogy is. I cannot do it right now. But right now, the Raiders are in – why are you shaking your head? You don't even know what my analogy is. And you're going to understand my analogy completely when I tell you it privately.
I know, but that's like – that just means knowing how little you regard like the political correctness and all this kind of stuff. This is going to be the most offensive analogy that's ever been uttered.
Oh, it's really bad. It's horrible. But when I tell it to you, you're going to completely understand where I'm coming from. Anyways,
I'm ashamed of both of us because I already know.
I haven't even done anything yet.
But you've already thought it.
Oh, it's horrible. It's terrible.
And I've already thought about the fact that I'm going to laugh at it.
Yes, okay? You're going to understand and you're going to agree with me. Anyways, let me make the PG.
Both bad.
Let me make the PG version of it. Okay, the Raiders are in football purgatory, are they not? Do they not have a top 2-3 wide receiver on their team? Do they not have a top 2 or 3? Do you believe in PFF? Because I've gone back and forth with PFF. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them, but I usually love them more than hate them.
I actually think that's kind of everyone's relationship with PFF. I think that pure analytic evaluation of the game is not a complete picture, and that's kind of what they do. So they're a good tool. They're a good tool to have in the toolbox. As long as you regard them that way and you don't put too much credence into it, you're fine.
Totally agree. I would like to parse that with what I just think rationally or with my eyes. But anyways, the Raiders they're in purgatory. They have Devontae Adams. They have Max Crosby, who PFF says is the best defensive end in the league. That goes over every other defensive end that you deem to be great. They have Derek Carr, who you're not as high on as I am, but I think is great. They have Josh Jacobs, who's an elite running back and is in a contract year. They have all these pieces. Darren Waller when he comes back from IR, but they're in purgatory. OC, like what? Yeah, you beat the Broncos in Denver and OT, and then what? You come back home and then what? You're gonna go 8-9. I don't even know how many games there are anymore. But like, what exactly are you doing? Like, if you're a Raiders fan, all you're looking at this season, and I know we put him to bed last week when we did our last podcast. This is kind of another one, but it's a win, so we got to talk about it. But it just feels like there's nothing to gain. You're not making the playoffs this year. What the hell are you going to do with Carr? You can cut him, by the way. His cap is not a huge hit. What are you going to do with Devontae Adams? He came there for Carr. Josh Jacobs, you didn't pick up his option, his fifth-year option on his rookie contract. So what are you going to do? He balled out this year. Are you going to re-sign him to a fat deal? You don't want to pay running backs. Crosby's paid. Waller's paid, but he's not happy with his I mean, like, honestly, like, Vegas feels what it is, which is a desert. They feel like they're in the middle of the desert and kind of caught in no man's land.
Yes, you're 100% correct. And this is why it's important to have not just good coaching, but good front office leadership. Because the coaches the coaches and the players cannot do anything except try their hardest to win games. You're not allowed, as a player and a coach, you're not allowed to tank.
Yeah.
Right? You're not allowed. So what you need is a general manager and an owner that are like, look, Derek Carr, for all of his flaws, he's going to fight his ass off to win football games, and he's got enough talent that when he's protected and
when everything goes right, and I'll admit that, by the way, for all the defense that I do of Derek Carr, sorry to interrupt, for all the defense that I do of Derek Carr, I do admit that he needs everything to be picture perfect for him to look good and look great. But when he looks good, he looks great. And that's why I defend him. But yeah, I mean, yeah. But, and I don't know how many, like you said this last week, in order to be an elite quarterback or in order to levitate your team to a elite spot, you need to do well with bad around you. But I just don't know how many quarterbacks there are like that. Like, I think it goes Patty Mahomes, maybe Josh Allen, and he's had his own troubles. Tom Brady, obviously the GOAT, Aaron Rodgers, but there's not a lot out there like that. Most people need to have things go well around them in order to win.
I agree with you, right? I mean, look at Joe Burrow is one of these promising young quarterbacks that we always cite as like that's the future of the league. That's the guy. But like, what happened with Joe Burrow when Jamar Chase was out of the lineup, right? So
he looked ordinary.
If you can't make lemonade out of lemons, and you shouldn't be expected to do it 18 weeks out of a year, 17 weeks out of a year, right? With a playoff run, you should have people helping you out. Yeah. But if you need those ideal conditions to contribute to your success, you're probably going to be a playoff quarterback, but not a Super Bowl quarterback, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think we see more eye to eye on Derek Carr than we do Jimmy G. But anyways, go ahead.
To get back to the point, though, it's like Derek Carr is always going to play his ass off, and so is Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, especially Josh Jacobs, right? So is Devontae Adams, Crosby, all these guys, everyone, all the way down to the last dude on the roster who just runs down on punt coverage like once a week, right? Yep. All those guys, their job is to put out good tape. Their job is to maximize the length of their career. The coach's job, same thing. They're trying to win every game. So you need to have good leadership that recognizes, this combination of whatever, of coach and quarterback, of quarterback and receiver, of offensive line and running back, of defense and our linebackers aren't good. We don't have the defensive backs. We're not going to have a great year. I know that's a lot harder for people to do than it is for some schmuck podcast person to talk about. But the Bears did this. The Bears were just like, fire sale. All right.
Yep.
Like we can't. We're not good this year.
Yep.
A bunch of really talented players.
Traded Chubb. Yep.
A bunch of really good players.
Yep.
And said, all right, you know what? As much as we would like for these guys to be building blocks moving forward, the chemistry's not there, the depth isn't there, whatever it is, I got to pull the ripcord now. We got to do this parachute thing. And maybe Mark Davis doesn't allow that, right? Maybe Josh McDaniels from the underside is just begging, no, please, I got to keep these guys in the building. I know we're this close. We've been in all these one-score games. We've squandered these opportunities. Just watch, though. Look at the bright spots. Focus on the bright spots. I want to make that consistent. And so they didn't do it. They waited too long. And so now they're stuck in this purgatory because you had all these assets, right? You have all these assets on your roster that before a trade deadline you can use, you can move. Other people want them. Other people have room to pay them. Other people would be interested in them. And you're probably not going to be able to unload Carr, but everyone else that we've talked about, you certainly could. Now you can't.
Okay. Well, hang on. Sorry. I put my hand up and it stopped you mid-thought. But I was specifically going to ask you that because they're saying what the Raiders could probably get right now is in minimum second and third round pick and maybe way more for Derek Carr if they moved him in the offseason, and his cap hit is zero based on the way that they structured their contract. Now, I'm bigger on Carr than you are, but would you make that move? Because honestly, what I'm asking you – okay. As he nods his head, if people are only listening via audio. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can see him nodding his head. OC is all about trading Carr.
Not just nodding my head. Not like you ever seen when a horse is trained to
vigorously is the word that I would use.
Yes. Like Carr in
for
this
what?
situation.
So okay. All right. Sorry.
Carr,
I'm interrupting. I'm terrible at that. But what are you doing with Devontae Adams? What are you doing with Josh Jacobs? What are you doing with Max Crosby? What are you doing with all those pieces that you have around Hunter Renfrow? Then what? You're trotting all that out with a rookie quarterback that you take in the draft?
Yeah, why not? Now, Devontae Adams isn't going to like that. He's going to want to trade, right?
You're trading him for more assets. So you're really fire selling.
What? You just told me that there's only 2 teams in the league that they can beat.
One, actually. I think that's the only team that they can beat. Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's why leadership, and it goes back to roster construction, our very first podcast we did together, right? It matters. You cannot be reactive in the NFL to what your roster looks like in week 10. You can't be like, you have to be able to foresee these things, plot these things out, plan for the future, construct a future, right? Stockpile draft picks and create a future. And maybe that's hard. Maybe Mark Davis, with his little Dutch boy bowl cut doesn't like it. I don't know. Maybe there's some other forces at work here. But you're not winning this year. You're not winning next year. You're probably not winning in 2024 either.
Okay, hang on as I drop my phone for the 15,000th time. Hang on with not winning next year. They've been in 7 one-score games. If those games had gone a different way, their record would look a lot different. So let's not talk about them like they're completely abysmal. All right, whatever. Let's move on. Sidetrack thing here. You have 2 daughters. Congratulations, Papa. What were your daughters for Halloween?
It's Thanksgiving. You want to talk about what my daughters were for Halloween?
Yeah, I just want to go on. Look, people I think appreciate more when we talk less about sports than more. So I just want to know what they were for Halloween.
Well, the baby, being a second child, I know this as a second child. I feel guilty for perpetrating the same thing upon my second child that was perpetrated upon me. But like the baby, we didn't go out and like buy her. We just like, oh well, she could be the leftover costume we had from my older daughters.
But she got a hand-me-down costume for Halloween?
Yes, she's 1. She doesn't care.
She'll know later.
She can't express to us what she wants to be.
That is terrible. So she got Chubbs' hand-me-down costume from last year?
Yes. From 2 years ago, actually, because that's when they were the same size. So she was a giraffe.
That is, I rarely get mad at you. I'm literally mad at you right now. That is offensive. That is offensive.
I told you that as a second child. I wish I hadn't done this to my second child.
All right. Are you if your wife comes in the room and she says, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" What route do you go?
Bad news.
Yeah, let's put that on the poll. Is there anybody that says they want the good news first? You always want the bad news first, right? Like, do you know anybody that wants the bad news first?
No, I want the bad news first.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, do you know anybody that wants the good news first? Sorry.
No, I don't.
No, everybody wants the bad news first. All right, the bad news is that the Raiders have a 3% chance of making the playoffs. The good news is that's tripled overnight.
Look,
they were a 1% chance of making the playoffs before the Week 11 win over the Broncos.
Let me give you the actual bad news. The bad news is that the Raiders are full of like high character guys who actually, the ones that are still on the roster because they didn't get put in jail or cut. This locker room is a bunch of character guys that are actually going to try real hard and try and win you games, and they're probably going to get 1 or 2 more. And that's the bad news because that means that your draft position is diminished by the efforts of Captain Tryhard, Derek Carr.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll tell you what, I was impressed mostly because I've been ripping into this section. You played college football. How would you break down positional groups in terms of football? You got like the front 7, back 4, bottom 3, whatever. I've been ripping into mainly I got it as 5, but am I wrong on that? I'm just doing secondary, DBs and safeties. Is that 5? 5 of the 11? You got 4 rushers?
5, because most of the time you're in nickel packages now.
Well, you got 2 linebackers, 4 rushers, right? And then 5 secondary. Anyways, the back 5 I've been ripping into, but they played a hell of a game. Again, I don't know what's going on with Denver. And by the way, if we were doing a Broncos podcast, OC, what the hell would we be talking about? They paid Russell Wilson and Sierra, all that money, and they're getting nothing. And the Raiders come in there, they're 2-0 against you. It's like, again, the only team that they can beat What the hell is going to happen with Denver? They just paid him 5 years and $1 gazillion.
I mean, thankfully, it's the Walmart people bought the Broncos, right?
Oh yeah. Money's not an issue. OC.
So money's not an issue. So they're
no.
They're like, we gave 100 and how many guaranteed dollars to?
They literally, that's like coins in their couch.
They're just like, dang it, I might actually have to go back to the the ATM.
No, they haven't seen an ATM in like 2 decades.
They're just like, man.
Yeah.
That's sell one of my albino pandas to cover his his salary. I don't know, man. Like, Denver's terrible. Russell Wilson has either become a shell of his former self or like the world's #1 like method actor, where he's totally aware of what a cornball he is, and he's just forcing it upon us anyway. Right? You know, like Daniel Day-Lewis does this.
Method actors where they get into their role. Yeah, like
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yep. They go like full-blown psycho. Yeah, no, that's not the case here.
I think it might be.
He's totally aloof. He thinks his teammates love him. He thinks he's cool. He has no idea how corny he is. I mean, I'd like to believe your theory, but I think you're wrong.
I actually think that's like, there's no way. There's not a chance in hell that you can be successful in any field in the world, especially one this competitive, right? And this dependent on your leadership abilities, and be like oblivious to the idea that your fan base is cringing at you, your teammates are cringing and laughing at you, the entire NFL is cringing and laughing at you. I think he knows it and is just like, F them kids. This is what I'm going to do. I am married to Ciara. My smoking hot soulmate thinks I'm great. And we're going to have a laugh about this every time we go home and turn on the replay of me standing at the podium and I still got my play calling wristband on. We're just going to giggle to ourselves and be like, everyone thinks that I'm being serious right here.
I want you to be right on that. But I think that you're wrong. I think he's literally the buffoon that you would have like in your classroom when you were a kid going to school, or if you were, an athlete in the locker room or whatever. I think he's literally oblivious. I think he has no idea that all his teammates hate him, that all of America thinks he's a joke. I don't think he's doing the method actor at all, but I could be wrong. But anyways, shout out to the offensive line. We've given him crap all year long, OC. Alex Bars at guard, Dylan Farham, Taher Munford, Funster Monroe, the backup tight end, filling in for Darren Waller, and Jermaine Eleanor at the guard as well, and Andre James at center. The whole offensive line surprised me. And again, I don't know how much of this has to do with Denver being terrible or, the Raiders showing what they could have shown in a bunch of really close games. But let's move on. The Kansas City Chiefs, OC, in all your time, either fighting or playing football or whatever sport you played, did you ever feel like you were around a guy that was on a different level than what you were?
Oh, yes. No. You learn, unfortunately, when you're someone like me to recognize that pretty quick, right? Where it's like...
Are you talking fighting or football?
Both, really. Where it's like... Okay. You have...
Give me your football example.
Well, the best football example I have is Eric Weddle. Okay? He's my college teammate, and he recently retired after coming out of... He recently retired, then came out of retirement, won a Super Bowl with just a playoff run.
Yeah.
Great story. But, in college, Eric Weddle was the fastest guy on the team. Okay. All right? He was so fast. We would have...
He's also small and white.
He's not that small. I mean, he's small-ish relative to most football players. He's about, 5'11", 200 pounds, whatever. But, people were more surprised that he was white because he would wear his freshman year. He was a freshman All-American.
Visor.
Gloves, sleeves, tights, visor. And everyone would just, he's like olive-skinned or whatever.
All right, hang on for a second. Did he purposely do that to not appear white?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But everyone thought he was you played corner. He was a freshman All-American corner, right? And then people would see him and be like, oh, look, you're Eric Weddle? Because you don't expect that, right?
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. That's a little side note. We would do this stuff between the end of the 04 season, and the beginning of the 05 season, right? Like you have a week off after your bowl game, and then you start your winter conditioning. And we did this thing called speed school, right? Where it's just all these drills to try and increase your fast twitch, get you better at running, blah, 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 right? And it was a competition. The coaches would create a competition. And like they would separate you by position groups, and then the fastest guy in each position would, race the other fast guys, whatever. Dude was so fast that he won a speed school race, flipping his hips, turning around, and backpedaling against like the number one wide receiver on the team.
Hang on, back up. He was backpedaling and the guy was running forward?
Both of them started running forward, okay?
Okay.
And he realized he was like, how many strides ahead. So mid-race, right? Let's say they're going 40 yards. Yeah. Mid-race, because he's a defensive back and they're good at this, he flipped his hips and finished in a backpedal.
Wow. And
we had already seen him make a million plays and all that kind of stuff. But looking at that, and I was just like, oh, that's a different species of human.
All right, well, I asked you all of that, and that was a great description, because that's basically if you took everything that you just said in a DB form and transferred it in terms of talking about a quarterback. I'm asking you that because when I watch Patrick Mahomes, and look, I'm a Dolphins fan, unfortunately, believe me, it hasn't been a fun ride for me. But like Tua has been great. And obviously I think that, McDaniel coming over from the Niners has been a huge piece of that. Obviously Tyreek Hill is great. And, Jalen Waddle is great. But when I watch like Stafford last year, right, won the Super Bowl with the Rams. But when I watch Patrick Mahomes, I feel like, and I think I can only think of one person that I played sports with, and it was basketball. His name was D-Money, and his name was D-Money for a reason, because every time he touched the ball, he was a bucket. And he thought he was a bucket, and he pretty much was a bucket. Sometimes, much to our chagrin, lost us a lot of games, won us a lot of games. But he was basically, his name was D-Money, and that's the only guy that I can think of where, okay, he's on some other bleep. And when I watch Patrick Mahomes do that, it's what you kind of describe about Eric Weddle, where it's like, watching Mahomes dissect a defense, forget going through progressions of like, okay, that guy's over there, the safety's coming down, the linebacker. He seems to be on another level to me. And I don't think the roster around him has been as good as the 4 AFC championship games that he's been to over the past 4 years has been, but he's something else to me. Do you see the same thing or no?
Yeah, and look, he's obviously special, but I think that you talked about this last week, right? Like, he's in a perfect situation. He certainly doesn't have a lack of talent around him.
Yeah.
When he won his last Super Bowl, he had probably the best offensive line in the National Football League in front of him, right? You had a quality running game. You had Tyreek Hill, who is kind of an eraser because you can just overthrow him and he's going to run underneath the ball, right? So if you have a strong arm, a guy like Tyreek Hill, who I despise, but a guy like Tyreek Hill is going to make something happen for you. And you have the best pass-catching tight end in all of football, right? So he's in a perfect situation, probably especially because of who his coach is, right? Because Andy Reid is just like, I got something really unique with this kid, and I'm going to draw up plays that accommodate that. Like, I'm going to create situations where he's deliberately throwing on the move. He's deliberately throwing off platform and off schedule because I know he's so good at that. I'm going to give him and Travis Kelce, who's an intelligent route runner and a guy who can dissect defenses himself, I'm going to give these guys license to diagnose the coverage and run any combination of routes based on that, right? Like, so he's in this really ideal situation. His physical talent is there. His arm talent is absolutely outrageous. He's obviously incredible at processing the game, but he's not on an island doing that. He's got guys with him, and I bring Travis Kelce up because you'll watch them, right? It's mostly post-game we get this kind of stuff. you'll watch them when they're in like a hurry up and he's going back to the line, and they're doing like these little hand signals, like communicating to one another. And like, this is what he's doing, so this is what I'm going to do.
100%.
He'll like run across the formation and just be like, hey, run a 7 instead, right? And like, they just do it, and they have license to do that. They have the ability to do that. And, you know, I thought they were going to lose the game last night. I thought the Chargers, for whatever reason, always play above their level and over their skis when they're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought that Herbert was going to, you know, have a nice little kind of like, see, I'm back, I'm healthy, I'm good, statement type win. And then you get Patrick Mahomes with the ball with anything more than like 47 seconds, and he's going to lead a touchdown drive. It's insane.
Yeah, I feel like it's very rare where you have a cheat code, so to speak, in sports. And I feel like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, when I watch them in their post-game press conferences, it just feels like they're talking about having the cheat code. You know, like Kelce was like, well, yeah, you know, I was one-on-one, and, you know, Patty's going to throw it to me when it's one-on-one. And then Patty said the same thing, and there's no way they could have heard each other. But it was like they were speaking the same language, you know, like when you're on point with a significant other or a best friend or whatever, and like you're saying the same damn thing. They said the same thing. They were like, yeah, one-on-one coverage, you know, Patty's always looking for it. Patty was like, oh, anytime I get Kelce, one-on-one coverage. And again, the press conference was like going on simultaneously. So there's no way that they could have heard each other saying that. But that's the kind of in sync that they are. And to me, when I watch it, and that's why it's crazy for me, you know, Mahomes lost to the Bucs when he had literally no offensive line. He ran more yards side to side like Barry Sanders than he did actually moving forward or throwing the ball. So I kind of throw that out. Whatchamacallit was offsides, D Ford or whatever. The Chiefs, when the Patriots beat him in the AFC Championship game, Mahomes should have multiple championships, and I'm sure he will get there. But I just feel like he's on another level than any other quarterback that I'm looking at, because I'm looking at Brady, and Father Time will catch up to him. He's still great. I'm not knocking him off or saying that he can't do it, but Aaron Rodgers is in a very deep hole, and I'm looking at everybody else like the only guy that stands out, as much as I love Tua, the only guy that stands out to me is Mahomes.
Well, he's unique and special, and that's kind of above. And I was wrong about him when he was coming into the league, because I had actually watched a lot of him at Texas Tech, and I was just like, I don't know, man. Like,
From your college stuff?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know.
And you weren't sold on him?
I was like, I don't know if I necessarily see it, because a lot of that stuff that he would do at Texas Tech, right? His receiver wouldn't be on like that kind of like shared brain, same page with them.
Gotcha.
So he'd be doing this kind of crazy stuff, and
you didn't think it would fly in the NFL.
And you know, like he would end up throwing into double coverage, and the guy would, you know, zig when he was supposed to zag, and it'd be an interception or something like that. So there was it. That's why I think it's important, even though he deserves all the praise he gets, I think it's important to state the facts that he's a great player who is in a system with a great coach and other great players in very key positions.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we know that the run game has been de-emphasized in the NFL. It's starting to come back a little bit, so they're going to have to really have, at some point, the Chiefs are also going to have like a really super high-quality running back that kind of fits the mold of what he and Kelce are. I mean, that duo, they're going to go down as the best quarterback-tight end duo, most productive quarterback-tight end duo in terms of touchdown production in the history of the NFL, because of what you're talking about. And he's going to want to get, you know, another receiver that's kind of on par with what he had with Tyreek Hill. He's going to have a running back that can kind of carry that load. Their offensive line is going to have to stay good, because he's not going to get faster and quicker and more elusive. He's going to be a guy that, you know, probably needs a little bit extra help if he ever, you know, starts to slow down. But he's unbelievably special. And it's obnoxious to watch sometimes, because he doesn't play for the San Francisco 49ers. He doesn't play for the Raiders. He doesn't play for a team that I want to see be successful. He plays for the damn Chiefs.
I know. God, he's just like, when I watch him, I feel like he's sitting back and he's looking at like a math problem, and the math problem looks impossible to solve. And then he just goes, oh, minus the 3, carry the 4, divided by 7, boom. You know what I mean? Like,
So-
I just feel like his mind is moving quicker than any analyst or any other player on his team or the opposing team.
So Patrick Mahomes is Goodwill Hunting in this area.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. He's the janitor. Well, he's much better looking than the janitor, and he's a lot taller. And that's not a great. It's good in terms of him solving the equation, but not in terms of his physique. Any hooser, you just led to the Niners, so I was going to ask you between two things because I got to ask you about this crazy line that I just knew was a bad line, so I wanted to bet against it. I didn't. I just left it alone completely, thank God. But we'll get to that in a second. You led to the Niners. Niners, Cardinals in Mexico tonight, OC. And apparently like 100,000 fans and like 95% of them are Niners fans. Kyler Murray not going to play. Is this going to be a blowout or what?
Yeah, it's going to be a blowout. The Niners, they did their week of practice in Colorado Springs at the United States Air Force Academy because...
Salute to the troops.
Sure, yes. But also because they were dealing with, like, Mexico City is the highest altitude major city in the world.
Oh, I thought you were going to say drug capital of the world.
I think it has some drug and kidnapping issues as well, but Mexico City is like it's a high altitude city, like the high altitude city. So
yeah, I saw that. I think whatchamacallit, George Kittle had like a tube, like an oxygen tube. Yeah, when he was walking on to the field. I think I saw that earlier, right before I called you. Anyways, go ahead.
So they took it seriously. They went to acclimate themselves at a high altitude city in the United States, and then they're flying straight to Mexico City, or they already flew to Mexico City, and the Niners recognize kind of the situation that they're in, right? Where they started the season with a lot of people thinking, all right, this might be, if the quarterback situation goes well, this might be, another kind of Super Bowl run type year for the San Francisco 49ers, and it's turned out to be more of like hey, this is a prove it year. Like, Shanahan, you have to prove that you do this on your own, that you weren't.
Whoa. Sorry, back up. I know you're in the middle of your tirade. You're telling me that you think this is a prove it year for the Niners brass?
I don't know if it's a prove it year for the brass. What are the brass trying to prove?
No. I'm saying, do you think that either Shanahan or Lynch could be fired after this year, regardless of the results?
Not that kind of prove it year, but prove to us that you're actually a Super Bowl contender because you haven't played like that.
What do you mean? They got to the NFC Championship game last year.
Right, but then things started the wheel. Have you not been paying attention to the 49ers? They had the first part of the year, they had like 4 performances where you were just like, wait, is this the kind of year that we thought we were going to have? No, it's
not.
They
lost to the Bears. They lost to the Falcons. Whatchamacallit got hurt. The guy that turned into Tyreek Hill, Jaden Waddle, and Nick Chubb.
Yeah. It becomes, instead of being
Try Lance.
You're one of the NFC favorites.
What I'm saying is, regardless of what the Niners' fortune would be from here moving forward, by the way, a lot of people picking them to win the Super Bowl, but regardless of what happens from here moving forward, do you think that Lynch or Shanahan's jobs are in jeopardy? You're saying it's a prove me year.
I didn't know that prove it year carried the connotation that someone was going to get fired.
I mean, if my girlfriend tells me prove it on date night or whatever, she's leaving me if I don't prove it.
Okay, well.
All right.
If
go ahead. So what's your definition of prove it? If prove it is not getting fired, what is prove it?
Prove it. Exactly what I was trying to talk about when you interrupted me and said that I was saying someone was going to be fired. What I'm saying is you start the season as kind of an NFC favorite, and then halfway through the year, you're flirting with 500. And it's like, now you got to prove that you're actually the team we thought you were. Now you got to prove that you were not just benefiting off the fact that you had an offensive genius who's now with Miami as a guy that really was kind of the mastermind of all your run game, especially creativity. Now you got to prove that you can win with Jimmy G, who we had this really weird personnel situation where we thought we were going to unload him, and he's still here, and you got to prove that there's not team chemistry issues with all that kind of stuff. And now, as I said weeks ago, now I added for you one of the most versatile offensive skill players in the history of the NFL, and certainly in the NFL right now. Now you got to prove to me you know how to utilize a weapon like that and actually win games with it. This game, I think, is not really damaging or scary for the San Francisco 49ers. I think they're going to take care of business with Kyler in or out. I think they would have won this game. We'll see, right? Anything can happen, especially when you're in a different environment with new conditions and the altitude thing. I think they've adjusted themselves to, but whatever. Their defense is playing a lot better. You can't be sitting here at 5-4 at this point in the year and be like, oh, yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good. We're playing how people thought we would be playing. If I'm Shanahan, I don't think my job's in jeopardy, but I think, man, I have a bunch of talent on this team and high expectations coming into the year, and so far we have not performed anywhere near the level of those expectations, so I got to make something happen, and I got to do it now.
All right. I mean, Sean, I look, I love you, bud. I mean, I honestly do. If I got married tomorrow, you'd probably be in my groomsmen group. You know what I mean? I think I love you way more than you love me.
So I'm flattered by that. You wouldn't even come to my wedding. So.
Okay, first of all, you invited me 24 hours before the wedding started.
Okay,
well, let's not get into that.
Whatever your somber tone.
You literally sent me the invite, and the date that it was mailed was after the wedding date. That's what true. Happened there. Any hooser. I will tell you this. I can't really talk to you about Niners football because I feel like you're just you got rose-colored Niners glasses on, and so like talking to you about that is just it's hard for me because I understand where you're at. I mean, it'd be like talking to me about the Dolphins. It's fine, but let's move on real quickly.
No, it's not though because the Dolphins are outperforming every expectation. The Niners are the opposite of that.
No, they're not. People are picking the Niners to win the Super Bowl.
Do you know what the Niners' record is right now?
6-5?
The 49ers have struggled relative to expectations.
The NFC is so bad, they're literal favorites. Anyways, I got to go because my battery's going to die, and I didn't bring my charger down here because I'm an idiot. So when you smell something and it smells like a fart, it's usually a fart. The Vikings being underdogs against the Cowboys at home while they were 8-1 and then getting blown out. Your thoughts on that very quickly before we go.
On the Cowboys being blown out?
No, the Vikings getting blown out by the Cowboys.
I thought you said that the Cowboys got blown out, and I was very excited to correct you. No, look, the Vikings are the flip side of this coin that I was just talking about with the 49ers. No one believes that Kirk Cousins is supposed to be the dude, right? No one believes that this Vikings team coming into the year is
the chains on.
And no matter how many games they win, they're still like, I don't know. Really, are the Vikings legit? So when something like this happens, there's a confirmation bias for all of us, right? When they get blown out, all of us are just like, yep, that's who they are. That's who they really are.
I know.
And we might be right, we might be wrong, but we want for the Vikings to be what we expect them to be. And they've been better than that, and it's uncomfortable for most of us. If you don't live in the Dakotas or the state of Minnesota or like northern Iowa, you don't want to see the Vikings win. Like no one else except for North Dakota, South Dakota, and northern Iowa wants to see.
I know. I just didn't see 10-3 outscored in the first quarter, 13-0 outscored in the second quarter, 14-0 outscored in the third quarter, 3-0 outscored in the fourth quarter, 40-3. I mean, yeah, the Vikings are kind of like that, that girl that's just always going to let you down. So I don't have much on that other than that I was really depressed by it. That's all.
But I will say this, right? In the NFL, every team is afforded like 2 of these a year at least. 2 or 3 of these like inexplicable. Wow, how bad was that performance? Like, what's wrong with you? Why do you suck? Like, and sometimes you can explain it easily by saying, oh, they didn't have so and so. It's just a bad matchup for them, or everyone was injured that week, or they were exhausted because they went 7 in a row without a bye week. Or
they didn't have any of that. Yeah.
Right. There's always something that you can explain it away. Everyone in the NFL has a couple of losses that you're just like, I don't understand where that came from. And I think that might end up being this for the Vikings. Like, we'll look back at this, and if they lose in the NFC Championship game, we're not going to be like, yeah, we knew this about them because of that Week 11 game or whatever it was, right? We're just going to be like, that was a fluke. I think they're a better team than what they showed.
But, yeah, no, I think so too. I mean, any given Sunday. Anyways, you be well, my friend.
Good luck. Good luck with your dying battery.
Yeah, I know. Battery's so dead. Silver and Zach podcast. He's on Twitter at Real OC Sports. I'm at Zach Sports, ZAK Sports. Until next week, holla.